The main character's name is Kim's son. The system window reports that he has completed the game. The end of the game will now begin. Everything is over 10 years ago. This world became a playground, and people turned into players. They killed monsters and tried to survive. Tasks were given to them by the masters of the game, the so-called GMS. Naturally, it was not the players who enjoyed the game, this distant being high in the sky. A deity, there were also deities who watched the game. Some made the players, they liked their avatars, and personally took part in the game. And as a result, humanity died out saying lies on a wasteland and curses the game the finale achieved. The system window reports that he has reached the bad end. The Lonely World Sehan says a bad ending. Well, what else can you call it if not a bad ending? Lonely World. What a big name. It suits him so well. The last man standing the system pays tribute to him for completing all the tasks alone. The game will be over soon. He's done well. Sehan says yes, that's how it ended. These words mean that his role is played. Instead of being alone in this deserted world, it's better to die. He looked at his sword side and pointed the point at himself. He was about to commit suicide when suddenly a system window appeared. He opened his eyes and asked, "What does that mean?" The system window says that the DLC shop opens after clearing all single-player modes. Sehan says that such shops are usually found in console games. Why did this suddenly appear? He swipes the window, and the following inscription appears for points. He can purchase items that will help him DLC. He raised his head and said, "Maybe it's the Joker that appears after beating the game. Or is he crazy?" He purchased a second set and received benefits. After the start of the second round, he will be able to purchase various items in the shop. Sehan hopes that all of this is true. If he really can start everything from the beginning, then he can change everything, including this bad ending. He closes his eyes, and the system window tells him to try to come to the other end in the second round and wishes him a pleasant game. Thus ended round 1. Sehan opened his eyes before him. He saw an ordinary city. Everything turned out to be true. People walked the streets. All the buildings are intact. Sen thinks everything is back. The status window does not open yet. He lies back on the bench and thinks that he has not seen this piece for so long. Some girl came up to him and asked what he was doing there. Sehan was surprised. Her name is Han Jisoo. She was his close friend at university. Sehan stared at her, and Jisoo asked if she had something on her face. She was a year younger than him, but she knew how to take good care of others. She often approached him when he was alone and talked to him. Sehan answers her question and says no, nothing. He continues to think that they were quite friendly. She was very well-mannered, so she did not let him go until the last yes. Until the end, she asks, "Has he been playing games all night again?" At this rate, his grades could suffer this semester. Sehan says nothing. Jisoo replies that it means nothing. Sehan grinned and thought that the semester wouldn't even start anyway. He asks her what date it is today. Jisoo was surprised by the question and said that today is August 17th. Sehan lowered his head and thought that it must be true. He looked up. The game started from the beginning, so he returned to that very first day. Jisoo calls Sehan. Why is he frozen? Maybe not fully awake. He leaned back on the bench and sighed. Did he really come back? Jisoo asks if he remembers that classes start next week, right? He replies that he remembers and thanks her for everything. He is grateful to Jisoo for more than just taking care of him. Jisoo turns his head and says anyway, but she abruptly fell silent and asked if they could go somewhere else. Sehan asked why all of a sudden there was a guy walking in the distance. It was Lee Jong-hyun. He always hangs around Jisoo and calls Sehan a lost player. Sehan thinks he became like this at level 1. He doesn't even remember. He probably didn't even pass the first level. Sehan tells Jisoo not to change seats just because of him. Monsters began to crawl out of the ground. They were small, green goblins. Some student asked what it is there. The other replied, "It seems these are people in suits." The student asks, "Are they such small people?" Maybe kids. People became interested in creatures. Are they filming a movie or what? Several people began to approach the goblins. Jisoo offers to watch too. Sehan says no one asks to wait a bit. Jisoo turns around in surprise. 10 years ago, he followed her to see the monsters. He asks Jisoo to wait. Just a crowd of people crowded around the monsters. Jisoo looked at what was happening there and was horrified. Some guy screams that a man was stabbed to death. Goblins started attacking people. The goblin killed the man and made a vicious sound. More and more monsters began to emerge from the ground. Jisoo jumped back and asked, "What is this? Are these real monsters, people?" The goblins Jisoo offers to watch too. Sehan says no one asks to wait a bit. Jisoo called out to San-won. Goblin jumped up to them. Then he was too weak and cowardly. The goblin raised his blade and Jisoo clenched her teeth to cover sex. Yes, he was like that at the first level, just who covered him with herself, and he stood in his tracks. Her scarlet blood spattered him 10 years ago. He stood behind her and then he just ran away like the last freak. The system notifies that level 2 will begin. Soon, synchronization starts. Sayan swipes the win. Windows of the system, he is a lone player who has seen the end of this world, but this time it will be different. Sayan ducked under the goblin's arm, dodging the blow. He hit the goblin with his fist this time for nothing. He picks up the goblin's blade and plunges it into him. This time will not be like. Then the system notifies that he destroyed the goblin reward for completing level 1. He can purchase DLC items. He gets the balance of level 1 points. He has access to the community. He can use it after the synchronization is completed. The system window reports that the synchronization is complete. It congratulates you on the start of level 2. Sehan destroyed the goblin for completing the task. You can get points. And for these points, you can increase your experience or buy any item. This is a general rule for most games. These rules also apply in this world, which has become a game. The system window says that for the destruction of the goblin, he receives 300 points, which are added to the points already available at the first stage. He had 700,000 points left. Sehan said in surprise, "Go crazy." His hands began to tremble. It's like buying non-purchasable items in newbie RPG. A system window appeared in front of all people, which notifies that they were invited to the game of the gods. Now they are all players and they will have to complete the main task. And if you fail, there will be punishment. They can learn more about this in the Help tab. People wonder what all this means. A game, Sayan thought. Yes, this was the game of the gods. If he suddenly increases his points or uses too good a weapon, the gods will immediately notice him. He needs to be careful. He needs to be grateful that everything has started anew. Flying eyes around our observers. These are the eyes of the gods and the master of the game for each user. It can be different depending on the level, but in most cases it looks something like this. The goblin decided to attack Sehan. Sayan noticed him and thought if they suspected him of something, it might affect the difficulty level of the quest. They won't just leave it like that. The game can become more difficult from the very beginning. You need to be careful in your actions and not stick out once again. He caught the goblin by the throat and lifted him off the ground. I wonder if it looks like he's having a hard time dealing with a goblin. Jisoo calls him Sayan. Turns around and asks, "What is it?" Jisoo says it's hard to believe, but she seems to know what's going on. Such monsters can't just appear in the real world. This means that reality is no longer what she used to see. Sehan releases the goblin and says that it is possible because it is impossible to see such an alert with a message in the real world. Jisoo sighs and says, "Okay." Sayan says how calm she is. Jisoo exclaimed, not her, but him. Why is he so calm? And how did he deal with that monster so easily? The system window reports the main task you need to get out of the university campus difficulty level. 2 days are given to complete from now on. They will be attacked by numerous goblins. Players must either destroy them or run away from them. The main goal is to go off campus. Each player receives a reward depending on their personal achievements. It is recommended to actively participate in the passage of the task. Sehan looks at the difficulty level in time and thinks it's easy. He invites Jisoo to talk later. Now we need to move before these monsters come. Goblins continue to advance and actively appear from the ground. Sehan takes Jisoo's hand and says, "Run a whole mob of goblins chased after them." Sehan and Jisoo ran through the bushes past the other students who didn't see the goblin. Jisoo turned around to look at the students. The goblins were killing everyone in their path. Jisoo closed her eyes and didn't look back anymore. After a short run, they began to rest. Jisoo breathes heavily and asks about those people. Sehan says everything is fine. She asks what Sehan replies that there aren't many casualties yet. Goblins have the strength of an average adult male, especially as soon as people start to gather in a crowd. Everything will calm down a bit, he thinks. But that's just before the advent of the Hopka blends. It seems around this time he entered the safe zone, and he was right. He and Jisoo went to the safe area. Jisoo asks safe area. The system notifies that they have entered the safe zone. Sehan remembers when he was rummaging around here in the first stage, he got lucky and reached the safe zone. Jisoo asks what kind of safe zone is this. Sehan replies that if this is a game, then there must be a safe place where monsters can't get it. The goblins try to get through the barrier but fail. They gave up and left. Sehan tells her to look at the goblins. They can't get in. Jisoo understood and sat down on the ground. She breathed a sigh of relief and said that they had survived. Sehan says that they will first rest here for a while and then move on. Jisoo agreed with him. Sehan thought to equip Jisoo with everything she needed so that she alone could take on at least one goblin. The day is slowly coming to an end. Lee Jong-hyun ran away from the goblins with another girl. He swears and asks what is really going on in front of them. Someone jumped out into the road, and this person killed the goblins. The man was equipped with various items. It was Jisoo. She held the blade in her hands.